Audrey Allison hype.
What's up, guys?
What's up?
What it do?
All right, so I hope everybody out there, can see and hear me all right.
Yep.
All right, so I hope everybody out there,
Just heard an echo. Did you hear that too, Ian?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I think I just heard it when Chris talked, to be honest.
Yeah, let me... Some beat writer predicted Kadri Olson will be the MVP of the game.
Yeah, man, hype train's leaving the station.
Yep.
You got him over Brian Hill?
What's that?
You have him over – you got him projected higher than Brian Hill, right?
Yeah, I know Brian Hill's your boy. Yeah, I already have Olsen pretty high, so I don't know.
Can't go much higher.
I can. I made a tab. You could see it's week 1 PS data. It's all the projected DK points from week 1 last year and actual score. So, I mean, a lot of them, like, you know, they're going to be all over the place, but a lot of the buckets were pretty close, but I could be a little more aggressive, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, 6.5 carries is a ton to project for preseason, but when you get confirmation like that from a close source, I mean, we'll take whatever you can get, right?
Absolutely. Someone asked me on Twitter if Devontae Booker was getting 36 touches now that they signed Theo Riddick. That'd be
probably want him to get 0 touches. Probably why they signed Theo Riddick.
He wasn't warming up, so I don't even think he's going to play. But that would be funny if they just hung him out to dry now that they got Riddick.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about preseason DFS because I know you both play, as do I. Ian, I guess I'll kick it to you first. What do you think makes it so profitable? Like, why are we playing this? Why do we love playing this so much?
It's kind of like week 17 of a regular season where you can just shave off like 20, even more % of the players in lineups because they're just not going to be on the field. Like in this case, do not consider putting a single starter in your lineup. If they do play, they're going to be in there for a series at the most. I mean, Fangio has already come out and said as much. So, yeah, I think, the 5 guidelines I put down from Sean Newsham's piece last year, it's opportunity is more important than talent, which, we know. We just need these third-string running backs to give us 10 touches a game, if that. Do the guaranteed prize pools. Making a cash game lineup with this much uncertainty is pretty difficult. If you do, I'd stick with the defenses. Pay attention to beat writers, which we're doing right now. Obviously, you realize this is the Hall of Fame game. I would treat it like a week 4 preseason game because, again, these teams are going to have 5 total preseason games. And the defenses are valuable. It's pretty much the only position other than the kickers that are actually on the field for all 4 quarters. So don't be afraid to roster both defenses. Let's get crazy.
Yeah, man. I really think that first point, especially, people are going to roster starters, and especially like the only time they're even going to play half the game potentially is probably that 3rd preseason game. The second, sometimes they get close, but usually you're looking for undrafted free agents and day 3 picks at running back and wide receiver. Those are generally the guys who are going to play and score the most, fantasy DFS points in these early preseason games and just throughout the preseason in general. So I think there is a big edge. Sean, what about you? Like, what do you find is like the biggest edge to preseason DFS?
So, I mean, the biggest edge is Matt Ryan will be, over 5% owned, I think. Devontae Freeman will be over 5% owned. Julio Jones will be over 5% owned. Calvin Ridley. All these guys that you guys mentioned probably won't even see a snap tonight. People, they must mistaken it for week 1, or they just don't know how preseason works. But, especially the Hall of Fame game, this is going to be like the week 4 of the preseason where we see a lot of guys that are just trying to make the team. So we won't see very many starters. I guess Noah Fant might play a little bit, but even guys like that, they might just play a series or 2. So, I mean, as we speak, I'm updating projections. I think projections help to a certain extent, but it's so close. I mean, these games are so volatile that I don't really have any player being projected more than, 6 or 7 carries or even like 2 or 3 receptions. So it's spread out pretty thin across all positions.
I mean, so following that up, how do you even start to go about projecting preseason DFS? Because it's a whole different beast in a way from the regular season, when you kind of have a 4 or 5 active guys at receiver, 2 or 3 active guys at running back. Like, how do you just kind of split it up equally and give everyone a pretty even percentage with a couple of guys kind of spiked, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, I mean, roughly speaking, I have the entire depth chart, so I'm looking at 12 receivers for the Falcons right now. A lot of guys I've never heard of, so I did some research, watched some YouTube clips, but checking Twitter, I have 5 different lists open, just looking for any information we can get. And then from there, kind of using my experience the past few years making projections for preseason and just tweaking. But like I said, I don't try to get super aggressive. But, guys like Tim Patrick were ruled out earlier. Devontae Booker, I guess, won't play. So I'm getting rid of his touches I had and just spreading it to the 3 or 4 backs that are even active. So like you said, there's no official inactive list. So it's all about scouring Twitter and just kind of using my experience to just update them accordingly.
Ian, I know, Sean was just mentioned that he was on YouTube kind of doing some research. You're like the king of having these clips for all these guys. I know you watch a ton. So tell me some guys that stand out to you that are going to get at least a decent amount of snaps in this game.
Yeah, and real quick, we did get from Andrew Mason, a Broncos beat writer, just a list of some guys that were working out early and not expected to play. Flacco, obviously, Andy Janowicz, Phillip Lindsay, Devontae Booker, Royce Freeman, Deshaun Hamilton, Cortland Sutton, River Crocraft, he was kind of hurt too, Tim Patrick, and obviously Emmanuel Sanders. So shouldn't have been thinking about playing too many of those guys anyways, but if you were, please don't. So this slate, we got lucky in that Fangio told us that the Broncos are going to play 3 quarterbacks. The Falcons are only going to play 2. And one of those quarterbacks is Matt Schaub, Mr. Pick Six himself. I think Pro Football Reference says 38, but that dude's got to be pushing 40. I don't believe it. And so pretty much the thing that we're focusing on, guys, is something named Kurt Benkert. He played at Virginia and East Carolina. He played in last year preseason. He wasn't very good, but he's the only guy out there that it seems like almost for sure he's going to get more than half of work. But you know what? I mean, I wouldn't blame you if you want to fade the quarterback position as a whole. But if you are just want, you just want some snaps and pass attempts, Kurt Benkert's the guy. At the running back position, cannot say enough good things about Brian Hill. This dude averaged 7.9 yards per rush last season and limited opportunities, runs violent, getting actual really good notes from training camp about his pass catching ability. I mean, this was supposed to be kind of a grinder type guy, but they apparently are throwing the ball more and he's doing good things with it. Same can be said a little bit for Quadri Ollison, who is getting some beat writer hype before this game starts. Someone went as far as say he'll be the Hall of Fame game MVP. So we'll see there. Other side of the ball, I think David Williams is the Broncos running back to go to, just because the only other guys they have that we're expecting to really be active are Khalafani Muhammad and Devontae Jackson, who are both 5'7" and 180 pounds or less. So I know Denver, they got Lindsey, they got Riddick. They like these small guys, but at some point, I mean, they give the ball to David Williams, who's 6 foot, nothing, 225 pounds. He can actually handle it. So I like those guys. Quickly, Falcons receivers, Russell Gage and Justin Hardy. We're getting word that those are going to kind of be the starters. I know normally preseason starters don't play a lot, but these guys are backups as is. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're out there for, potentially a half. We'll see. I like Gage a little more than Hardy. The rumors are that he's unseated. Hardy has the Falcons' number 4 receiver, and he also does some punt returns. And then Marcus Green is the guy in the Falcons that I'm really targeting as well. He's only 5'8", 190, but super athletic guy, and he's looking like the Falcons' number 1 punt returner. And then finally, last few guys I'm looking at, Kelvin McKnight and Trinity Benson on the Broncos. These are smaller slot receivers, guys that, I'm not sure which one of them is going to get 5+ targets, but I feel like these are the guys that can give you that preseason, 5 catches, 40 yards, no touchdown type of game you need. And then finally, the real steal in this entire game is Juwann Winfrey. Guy's agent was Phillip Lindsay's agent last year, and he says Winfrey's this year's Phillip Lindsay. So guy's 6'1", 210, runs a 4.5, NFL-ready route running ability. I love it. I got Winfrey in like half my lineups right now. I'm going no tight ends, and I got defenses and kickers everywhere because, again, they are playing 4 quarters. So that's my breakdown of it. I mean, I watched as much YouTube clips as I could, like Sean, shout out Player Profiler, helping me kind of learn about all this athleticism on the fly. But, it's just a matter of that. And then training camp notes on Twitter, just trying to see who's been playing well in practice, who's getting these return opportunities. So I'm pretty confident with this core that at the very least they'll be out there and they have at least the ability to make some plays.
Yeah, I think a couple of those guys you mentioned, particularly Benson and McKnight, are 2 guys that I'm going to roster a lot of, because one thing that I think gives you a little bit of an edge in these preseason DFS contests is that when you have a receiver that's creating buzz in camp and is also in the running for a return job, I think that leads to extra opportunities as a receiver. Same applies to running back if they're in the mix for a return job, because if you're going to be a team's primary returner, that means you're going to be active on game day. So not only are you going to be a part of the 53, but you're going to be a part of the active 46, which means coaches have to get enough tape on you to make sure that you can cut it if they need to call on you as a running back or wide receiver on game day on Sunday. So I really kind of look toward those guys first when I'm kind of making my decisions at running back and receiver. If you're in the mix for a return job, I'm targeting you, and not even just for the opportunities that they're going to get, but also just as a return opportunities, as a little bit of upside, because none of these guys are going to project for much touches. So whereas in a regular season, you don't really care about return TDs because they're so rare, and you've got guys getting 8 to 10 targets that you can roster. In preseason, a return TD could swing the whole slate, because that's one of maybe 4 touches that a guy might get. That the leading, receiver or might get in a game. So I really like McKnight and Benson on the Broncos as well. How about from a betting standpoint, Sean? You kind of, how do you handicap this thing? Because I know you're like a top-down projector, so you got these box scores and all the player stats. But how do you kind of just go about preseason games in general and handicapping them, trying to figure out how the game's going to unfold?
I mean, I don't really try too much on the betting front. I mean, if I get some word on starter maybe playing longer than we thought, I might take a line before that, or before it moves. But right now, I mean, this game I'm staying away from. I'm trying to get some side action on some player props I'm trying to throw out there. So I'm getting creative on how to get action on this. So DFS, I'm going to have quite a few lineups out there. And then betting, I mean, 34.5. The Hall of Fame game is always a defensive struggle. So I'm going to wait for maybe like a line move closer to kickoff. If it goes up to like 35.5 or something, I'll probably go in on the under. But I don't really have a lean on the sides right now. I've been going through the players. It seems pretty even. Denver, I mean, we can talk about it, but Vic Fangio is dealing with some kidney stones, so they might have some incentive to,
That's what I'm saying. So the kidney stone angle. Let's go.
So I mean, given that, I'm considering this 2.5. But yeah, it's one of those things where I don't really have that much of an edge statistically or anything like that. I'd just pretty much be guessing. It's been so long for football that I'm obviously going to throw a bet down before the game starts. So I'm just itching to, get back to watching football and stuff. I'm just excited. But when it comes to my process and stuff, the Hall of Fame game, I don't really have much going on.
I've never seen 2 people get so excited about kidney stones before. Like, you guys are just giddy just now.
Fangio was in the hospital earlier.
If you look at, every coach, and granted, it's not just the coach, it goes into like what kind of roster you have, but Dan Quinn 4-12 against the spread in the preseason. And I think that's generally because he has a pretty veteran-laden roster with, that's in contention for a playoff spot entering the year. So there aren't necessarily that many things that he's not really trying to go out there and put his best guys out there and just let them play. He's probably working on specific things, specific position battles. So I do think Denver is probably a better bet to win this game. But yeah, it's extremely hard to predict. I just tend to kind of take the line value. I don't love it here with Denver. I think they're up to -3 at some spots. So I don't love that line, but I think Denver is a better bet to win this game. How do you guys feel about the defenses in the MVP spot, in the captain spot?
I think the defenses are good high floor plays. I was going to say, like a cash game lineup, if you take both defenses and both kickers, that's a pretty high floor. But I think the ceiling play might be trying to figure out what I have, 3 projected touchdowns in this game. So I think there will be a passing touchdown. So I think having the QB that throws to the pass catcher is probably the way I'm going to attack the GPPs. So, something like I was thinking about doing, Kevin Hogan, he has some of that rushing upside. Kevin Hogan with Trinity Benson and the Denver Broncos defense. It gives you some outs where Hogan can throw a touchdown to Benson, or like you mentioned, Benson can return a touchdown. And you get the Broncos defensive points for that too. So I'm just trying to find creative ways for, pass catching options. But yeah, I think Kurt Benkurt's going to be pretty high owned. So I think fading him might be a smart play in GPPs. He stunk during the preseason last year. So I guess he can only go up from here, but I have him playing close to 3 quarters. So it is hard to fade a guy that's supposed to play that much.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this because Benkert is the guy that I think is projected to play most of the game at quarterback for the Falcons. They think he might have a future as kind of the long-term backup there. But then I'm thinking, okay, if they think that about him, even for this year, maybe, he's sort of competing with Matt Schaub, probably not. But I'm kind of thinking of rostering Schaub a little bit as like a pivot play, because I think more people will be on Benkert, and Schaub is, in this kind of game, he's going to be playing against lesser players. He's a veteran guy. He could probably go out, even if he gets, 1, 2, 3 series, he's probably still as good of a bet to lead a touchdown drive as is Benkert. As you mentioned, kind of stunk last year. I was looking at the box score of the Falcons' first preseason game last year against the Jets, and they got shut out 17-0. And essentially, if you rostered any Falcon besides, I think it was Devin Gray, who caught 4 balls for 83, that you were sunk. Like nobody did anything on the entire Atlanta Falcons. So I don't know, Ian, how do you feel about just like a Broncos train? Because the Falcons have been poor, in the preseason under Quinn. We think the Falcons are probably the Broncos are probably the better side in the game. A stack where you go 5 Broncos, including the defense, including the kicker, maybe quarterback, running back, receiver, defense, kicker on the Broncos, and then just 1 Falcon.
Makes sense to me, man. Give me David Williams. I think he's the best bet in this game to potentially get double-digit carries one way or another. And can't stress enough how bad Benkert was last season. He completed 44% of his passes in 4 games. That's worse than Tebow was even doing. So he didn't even throw a touchdown. He threw 4 picks. Truly brutal. So that's why, with all that said about how much he's going to play, if you don't want to put him out there, I don't blame you. Because he's also, to top it all off, he's a statue back there. He's not going to give you any rushing yards. But really, I don't think any of these quarterbacks in this game are going to be running all that much. Was it Marcus Green? That's the wide receiver listed as a running back?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting play, though. I kind of like putting him in these lineups. I think he could be a guy that finds a way to get, 5 or 6 touches with the returns, maybe with a handoff and stuff. So I'm pretty intrigued by him.
Yeah, I actually have him projected for 0.3 rush attempts, which is most for any receiver. So, but yeah, real quick, I want to get your guys' take on my Benkert prop. I have over under 138.5 passing yards. What do you guys got? Under?
Yep, he stinks.
Way under.
No, I know that.
It's tough. I get that he's going to play a large portion of the game, but these games are so unpredictable. I think Schaub's going to be my guy. I think I'm just going to bank on the fact that he's going to either lead a touchdown drive in limited work, or maybe he gets a half. Who knows? He's got to get work at some point, right? So, maybe this will be the game. Maybe they want to just get him out there for a half. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm going under with Benkert. He has to prove it to me first that he made strides between this year and next, or he could just be a bad quarterback that they're trying to tell themselves otherwise about.
Yeah, I have no idea how he even made this roster, to be honest with you guys. I'm not exactly sure what the upside is here. Even in college, it's not like this guy was just crushing it or something and went under the radar. He seems like the classic kind of guy that looks like a quarterback, walks like a quarterback, but the second you throw some shoulder pads on and ask him to throw the ball, you want to look away. So, yeah, I mean, look, I don't really I'm for fading quarterbacks kind of in general, and also maybe the tight end position, just because I don't think there's a lot there. There's not much upside there. I see what Sean's saying. If you're attacking a GPP, you're going to have to try to guess right on what quarterback's going to hook up with one of these wide receivers. So it's not like there's, this long list of better quarterback plays out there in this game. So it's going to feel kind of disgusting, I think, no matter how you do it.
Yeah.
Unless you play Brian Hill, because he's an actual stud. So.
I mean, we're considering, investing money in Matt Schaub. That's how bad it is right now. So
it's the worst. Okay, so let's talk about these Broncos quarterbacks, because I think, do you go with Hogan starting the game, the most talented guy probably, who is lock in his first ever NFL appearance, or the guy that's finishing the game in Brett Rippon?
No, I'm not touching Brett Rippon. I think Hogan might be the guy. Just like I said, he has that rushing upside where, these guys all stink at throwing the ball. So, he might scramble for 10 to 15 yards. And that's another thing to emphasize. If you've never played DFS preseason, just know the score is going to be super low. It's not like a regular season slate. So, some like these quarterbacks get you 50 yards passing and a touchdown. That's amazing. And at running back, getting over 20 total yards is amazing. So we're not asking for much here. And I think Hogan can at least get some production. And I am playing about 38% of the game, which is my highest projection for any of these Bronco quarterbacks. But it's tough to gauge right now.
Yeah, it's always because, sometimes these games kind of devolve into these crazy back and forth at the end. And like the guy who's in there last just happens to benefit because he's playing against these like defensive backs who are just like falling asleep out there. But sometimes it's like you're kicking yourself because you faded the guy that started the game, and he maybe plays like 1, 2, 3 series, or he plays the least, but he ends up doing the most and ends up being the most productive because he's playing with the best guys on offense. So it's tough.
I don't know. I think Fangio is going to want to get the hell out of there and just might start running the ball to David Williams and run the clock. He wants to get out of there. So,
yeah, it's so David Williams. Who else we got? No love for Khalfani Muhammad.
He's fine. I think him and Devontae Jackson are almost like the same guy. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they are the same guy, honestly. But I don't know. I kind of side with Jackson. He's a little bit younger. He posted kind of better efficiency in college. I know he was at West Georgia, but I don't know. I feel like it's going to be one of those guys in kind of the Philip Lindsay pass down role, with David Williams being your homeless man's Royce Freeman. So we'll see which one gets it, man. I tend to side with Williams because he seems like the guy where if the Broncos want to get going, like Sean said, just give the 225-pound guy the ball and watch him run into the line. Because, I mean, Fangio's exact quote, like before this game, was that some starters are going to get a handful of plays, but again, he stressed that the young guys are getting most of the action. That's why I'm a little bit worried about like Kevin Hogan. He has been around a bit. I know he's starting, but wouldn't be shocked if he's gone by the first quarter and we kind of see Drew Lock and Ripien split the rest of the reps, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I actually did some research on like the top scorers in preseason and how much experience in terms of years played in the NFL do they have. So essentially, like is he a rookie? Is he does he have 1 year under his belt, or 2 or 3 or more? And for the last 3 years at quarterback, it's the most even of any position. So for running back and wide receiver, for example, among the top 10 scorers, so like the top 10 scorers over the entire preseason, which means you have to be putting up decent production in like at least 2, 3, or if not all 4 of the games over the last 3 years. For running back and receiver, rookies account for 47% each of running back and wide receiver top 10 preseason fantasy production. But quarterback, rookies 33%, guys in their second year 20%, guys with in their third year 20%, and guys with 3+ years of experience 27%. So that's a pretty even kind of split relative to these other positions. And it's not necessarily as big of a deal if a quarterback has been around for a couple years, because that's just the nature of the position. Some of these guys that haven't been around, for long, they make decisions on them a lot quicker. Like, you see these developmental guys get cut sometimes after like a year or something like that, or sometimes they don't even make the final roster in year one. So I think Hogan will be fine, because I think I have made that mistake in the past of kind of trying to worry too much about playing time versus just, effectiveness and talent. And, where it's like, hey, I get that opportunity is important, but within that, if we can only predict opportunity to a certain degree, then we're still kind of relying on who can get it done out there. So efficiency and talent and whatever does come back into play a little bit. So I think Hogan with that rushing ability is definitely at least just as viable as the other two guys, even if they're expected to get a little bit more time and kind of close out the game.
Yeah, I didn't realize Hogan could move a little bit. 15 touchdowns in 4 seasons on the ground at Stanford. He might be the only guy out there that's actually got a little bit of a rushing floor. I stand mistaken. So,
yeah. And then, it's interesting too, because I think, going back to kind of that, trying to pinpoint, which guys are going to end up scoring, and kind of looking at these, how many years they've been in the league and whatnot. Rookies, about half of all top 10 performances. So I think that's interesting, because that would kind of lead you to believe, hey, maybe it is a guy like Jackson that ends up getting more work than Williams, or somebody who could. I think at the running back and receiver positions, every year you spend in the league where you haven't really made a dent on a roster is almost like it's more of an indictment on your talent. And it's always, I think, kind of from a coaching standpoint, they're kind of looking for that fresh new toy, that fresh new thing, like is kind of the intrigue of uncertainty. So I think you could kind of see these rookies get some work, especially because this is still the Hall of Fame game. Like we're kind of treating it like we have to kind of treat it like it's the first preseason game, but in reality, the Hall of Fame game is like it could be like another beast entirely, where it could be like mostly rookies, and then the Williamses of the world get the most burn in like week 1 and week 4. So it's interesting. Like, it's really hard to decide.
Yeah, I think the Hall of Fame game's a lot like week 4. Week 4 starters really don't play at all.
Yeah.
So you're seeing a lot of the guys that are on the roster bubble. So I think it's going to be a lot similar to what we're going to see week 4 from both these teams.
With that said, David Williams in last preseason, week 4, 13 carries and counted 6 receptions, guys. He can catch the ball too.
Yeah, and that was week 4, you said, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so those performances I think are extremely common in week 4, especially for the guys, for those kind of like non-rookies, but guys who, they don't even have a chance to necessarily make it on a practice squad. Like because a lot of the rookies is like, even if they don't make the 53, they might be stashed away on a practice squad or whatnot. Like the fact that a team spends any draft capital at all on a guy, they're usually not just going to cut him after a year. So that is kind of a thing I'll be looking out for as this preseason progresses. Let's talk about the tight ends a little bit more, because I know Noah Fant is a guy that's probably going to be in a lot of lineups, but we've all talked about it off air. Tight ends really just not who you want to be rostering in these showdown contests where you have the choice of any position, because they're the lowest scoring position now. It's not even kicker or defense. It's tight end.
I mean, it's like what we were saying earlier about opportunity. Both teams are going to have up to 5 tight ends who are going to be active and rotating. There's only going to be 1, at the most 2 on the field at all times. Compare that versus 3 or 4 wide receivers out there. And I mean, that's before even considering the fact that a lot of these tight ends aren't even going to be really utilized as receivers. And who knows? I mean, I'd imagine the wide receivers are going to get more run, especially, without tight end whisperer Joe Flacco even playing. So it's, maybe we see them try to feed Fant a target or 2 in the first possession, but I'm not rostering a single tight end.
Yeah, same here. And right now I have Fant with the highest projected reception total at tight end with 1. And I figure he's going to be over-owned, so he's just a pivot off. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he caught a catch or 2, especially in the red zone. They might want to throw him a touchdown. But yeah, I think fading tight end for this slate specifically is the best way to go.
I mean, just to kind of put some numbers behind it. Over the last 3 years, top 10 running backs and receivers in the preseason average 10.9 and 10.0 PPR points, like DraftKings points, essentially. No one's really hitting the bonus either. That's the other thing. No one's really getting 100 yards, very rare. And then tight ends, and these are top 10 scorers. So the entire so this is not just like an average tight end in a given game. Top 10 guys over the last 3 preseasons at tight end, only 6.4 DraftKings points per game. That is nothing. That means like your average tight end is scoring like 1-2 points if you're lucky. And on top of that, tight end is a position where of those top 10 scores, so 30 over the last 3 years, only 6 of them, or 20%, have been rookies. So, we kind of hear that cliche a lot of times that tight ends take longer to develop, but they do kind of struggle. Even the talented guys struggle to produce meaningful box score numbers, as rookies. And even as year 2 guys, you actually see a lot more like 3+ year veterans at tight end scoring the most points in preseason in fantasy. And that's because it's usually those guys where it's like you enter year 3 at tight end. Now it's when you're really it's more of a make or break year. You have a lot of those like one-dimensional. They either can catch really good or they can block really good, and they're trying to like hold on to a roster spot. But you don't see as much out of these younger tight ends, even or the highly drafted ones. I mean, only, and there's not a lot of highly drafted tight ends to begin with, but only 7% of the top 10 scorers at tight end in the preseason over the past 3 years have been day 1 picks, and only 30% have been day 1 or day 2 picks. So it's still. You're still not seeing much out of these, early round high draft pedigree guys right away in the preseason. So I think, maybe if Fant was going to be like not owned that much, I would kind of invest. But the fact that I think he's going to be overowned, essentially treated like a starter because he is a starter or should be a starter by the end of the preseason, that is, I think he will be in more lineups than is optimal for trying to win one of these tournaments.
I think the only preseason tight end I remember balling out was Rico Gathers, and that was, he's another athletic guy, former basketball player, but he wasn't a starter like you're saying, Chris. So, if we had a little more snap, floor with Fant, I'd be more willing to take a chance on him because he is that more receiver-esque athletic tight end. But I don't think any of them would get enough reps. That's the only problem.
Yeah, so let's see. I have the top 10 tight ends. So the one argument, I guess, you could make against that is, we did see a couple of rookies last season break through in the preseason. Dallas Goedert actually led all tight ends in preseason fantasy points. And then we also saw Njoku in the top 3. But those were kind of outliers if you look over a larger sample of data. Tight end was actually the position where you did see more, of kind of like the long time starters, veteran guys. But I think Goddard, maybe that's like the one, and Njoku, Goddard last year, and then Njoku was a year 2 guy last year. But Goddard kind of doing damage, I guess, is the one kind of counterpoint you could make to fading Fant, because I think, similar in the sense that, very talented guy, has some, probably going to get on the field a lot in year 1. So, but besides that, I mean, Gathers was there again last year. He was a number 13 tight end. I don't even know if anyone noticed it in preseason last year. So, and that's another thing I noticed though, if you are kind of looking to target some of these guys in year 2 or year 3, there are quite a few repeats of guys that you see, they'll be kind of near the top of fantasy scoring one preseason, and then they'll be kind of back there the next preseason. So, that is something to keep in mind. But last year it was Goddard. Number 2 was Anthony Ferkser of the Titans. Number 3 was Robert Tonyan. 4, Njoku. 5, Daniel Brown. Then Ebron, Marcus Lucas, Matt Lacoste, Jordan Akins, Ben Broniker, and Logan Thomas. So, I mean, we did have a Denver tight end in there. And, Matt Lacoste, top 10. But maybe that's like, who is that? Is that Fumagalli this year? Like,
could be, yeah.
Is he even active? Is he hurt?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so he's probably. I mean, maybe he gets some. Maybe he's the guy then. If there is going to be a tight end for the Broncos, because
I have him the second highest projected tight end on the slate with 1.9.
Woo!
Yep.
All right, there you go.
And that's the thing this slate is you don't have to roster a tight end. Yeah. So everyone's a flex, so that helps because most of the time you have to take a tight end.
Absolutely, and I think so that when you start to go to those bigger slates, I think that's when it kind of applies, and maybe you look away from the rookies a little bit. Yeah, and this one I think they score about 60%, almost half, half of the points of wide receiver and tight end. Like of wide receiver and running back. So just not a lot of upside to rostering these tight ends. How do we feel about the Falcons defense? Like, are they anywhere near the same expectation as the Broncos? Because I think we've been talking a lot more about the Broncos offensive players. The Broncos are, of course, favored in this game by 3 points, over under of 34. Do we like the Falcons defense at all?
Yes, we like both defenses. They're in the models. I have Broncos projected for 8 points and Falcons defense for 7.6. Obviously, the low total, there's higher likelihood that they're going to get some defensive points for the final score. But I have a lot of baseline stats for sacks, so I'm not really factoring in the Broncos having Von Miller and Chubb in there. So I have more just like league average for week 1 preseason. And then, both defenses I have projected for 0.2 touchdowns, which is more than any position player on the slate. So it's one of those things where we know that the defense is going to be on the field the entire game. And especially a game like this, you just want people that are playing the whole game. So I just consider the defense is the safest plays, along with the kickers. We don't have each team is only carrying one kicker right now. So that's a huge benefit to just taking a kicker. You know that they're going to get the extra points and field goal attempts. So I just think, especially for a game where the total is 34.5, having the kickers and defense are just the safest plays for cash games.
I mean, yeah, I think that's worth repeating. I mean, both defenses projected for 0.2 touchdowns, more than any other player. I mean, when I first opened the DraftKings app, that the first 2 lineups I made, the first picks I made were defenses. I just put the Broncos in the captain spot, and the Falcons were the next I played. And then I'm just gonna, they're kind of the building blocks here. It sounds weird to say, but you're looking for touchdowns, and probably the best way to get them is these defenses. And then you stack them with your returners, you get some upside, but that's pretty much all you could do, because there's so much we don't know about these guys and how the playing time is going to be split. You got any I guess we'll go for about maybe 5 more minutes or so, maybe 7:45 Eastern. Sean, you got any other props or anything you wanted to get off here before we get out of here?
Absolutely. You guys name a player and I'll give you a prop.
Quadri Allison.
All right. So I'll give you guys, I'll do 38.5 rushing and receiving yards combined.
Way over.
Under.
Oh, there we go. Split book. All right.
I gotta take all the unders on Sean, man. He thinks he's slick over here.
You weren't even listening to the question.
Yeah.
You weren't even listening. You just said under.
Yep. That's generally how I bet Sean's props nowadays. Just like whatever Sean says, I'm going under because I know he's trying to get me to go over.
Okay, well, let's go with Trinity Benson then, your boy.
Oh, boy. See, that's my guy, man. I
wonder if I could set it like 50-something. Yeah. You'll still take. I'll give a real number here. I'll go over under 24.5 receiving yards.
I'll take the over just because I got to stay on brand. I've been talking up Benson, talked him up on Sirius Radio today, hearing the buzz. I mean, I think just in general, though, I would much rather bet like a number in that range for a receiver than a number as high as like 38.5 for a running back, just because, I mean, Allison, it's almost like they might be, we heard that he's in the mix for goal line usage, which means his spot on the 53, I would think, is relatively cemented. If that's the case, I mean, if you're talking about a guy for goal line carries and the year hasn't even began, you're probably saying he's going to make the roster. So that's the only thing. I think they might actually want to get a look at some of these other guys that they're really considering, letting go. So, I mean, Ian, I kind of like your call with Brian Hill there. I think that's a guy who I don't think his spot is guaranteed, at least not nearly as much so as a guy like Allison, who they just drafted, especially when you got all these other guys who can return. You got a guy, Luke Stalker, they signed from the Titans, who can also play that like fullback H-back role. And you have Ricky Ortiz, who plays fullback. So I know Hill spent some time at fullback too, but that like he's fighting for a spot. So let's go with the prop for. You got any props for Brian Hill, Sean?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. We'll just do rushing yards. Over under 22.5.
You go first, Ian.
So you're telling me if he keeps his efficiency up from last year, he only needs 3 carries? Way over. Let's go, Brian. He was my hashtag Madden 20 pick on one of those competitions today. I'm all in on Brian Hill.
I'm going under. I'm going under on every non-Trinity Benson prop.
There you go.
Real quick. Hey, 1 second. I want to add even more of the Trinity Benson hype. Per Emmanuel Sanders, Benson reminds him of himself as a rookie. So who else do you need to hype up Trinity Benson than Manny Sanders?
The real question is, before we get at when does Emmanuel Sanders get back on the field? Like, is it week 1? Does he get on the field in this preseason at all? No, right?
I think he is. I think he is going to be ready week 1. It looks like he's way ahead of schedule, which is crazy.
Fastest 30-year-old to recover from an Achilles injury ever.
No kidding.
Unbelievable. Yeah, no, his route running, I mean, they're just videos we're seeing, but his route running looks pretty good in practice, and he's out there, so we'll see. It's looking good. Yeah.
It just feels so like disgusting to draft him at this point. I don't know. If he's out there, he's out there. I think he's probably still the guy that can command the most targets on the team, but if he's hyping up Trinity Benson, I'm on board. But I think, you've also mentioned Kelvin. Is it Kevin McKnight or Kelvin? Kelvin, right. Kelvin McKnight, one of those two guys probably does at least something in this game. They can return. They're both fighting for a returner job, which means they'll probably both be near the top of the list in terms of targets. And we've heard, positive training camp buzz from both of these guys. So I think, if you're looking for kind of a captain play that's not the defense, those are a couple guys I would take a long look at, kind of at the top of the list.
All right, I got 2 more for you guys real quick, and then we'll get out of here. Drew Lock passing yards.
Yeah.
87.5 over under.
Under.
Yeah, under.
I can't pick every over, so.
What really sobers you up to these props is go look at some preseason box scores, especially some like week 1 from like last year. When you start seeing some of these things, you're like, oh my God, like every player I would have potentially picked in this game had like 0 fantasy points. Like it's just, sometimes you have these crazy offensive games, but a lot of times you have these ridiculous games where nothing happens, just defensive struggles. So I'm leaning that way. I think in this game, although I think Ewing had a trend that just said like 56% of games, preseason games with a total under 35 go over, but there's also some like, I think, counterbalancing trends for specifically Hall of Fame games. So where are you guys on the over under before we get out of here too?
Like I said, I'm thinking under, and I'm waiting for late action to maybe bump it up to 35, a key number like that.
Yeah.
And then go under. But yeah, 34.5 sounds about right. But I'm waiting to see if it goes up half point or so.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet the whole bankroll on it, but we got to bet on football. I mean, come on, I'm taking the under.
Yeah, and just a reminder for everybody out there, you can follow Sean, Ian, and my picks on the Action Network app. So go download that. Both of these guys obviously have great content out on actionnetwork.com right now. That because you're here. So go check out all these things. Follow our picks. We'll be posting them in the app all season long. Any last words, tips, thoughts about this Hall of Fame Broncos Falcons game before we depart?
All the Brian Hill.
John?
Yeah, both defense and both kickers in cash. GPPs, try to figure out what the QB or receiver tight end combo will be for the 1 or 2 touchdowns in this thing.
And I'm saying my stacks are Trinity Benson Broncos defense and Matt Schaub is my contrarian pivot play. I'm hoping he gets he plays like 2 drives and scores 2 touchdowns. So that's where I'm going. That's where I'm at in this game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys took something away from this. Always enjoy talking with you 2 guys. So we will hope to do this again pretty soon. And good luck to everybody tonight.